Hello and welcome to Chess Comedy Books 14, in which we take a light-hearted look at the so serious world of chess. Today I want to talk about a British master, international master, who died nearly years ago, but has had a very great impact on the game nationally, and his name was Hugh Alexander. I touched briefly on chess publications from Wales and from Scotland. Well, Hugh was born in the British Isles. He was born in Dublin, Ireland, of course, about 110 years ago. Sounds like I'm digging up something from prehistory, but his name is well known to us because of the books that he authored. I'm just going to look through a few things now that might be of interest to you. I hope they will be. Just adjust the camera a bit. Here's a book. It is The Best Games of C.H.O.D. Alexander, Conall Hugh O'Donnell Alexander. And it's written by Harry Golombek and Bill Hartston. And it has a memoir, a very good memoir, by Sir Stuart Milner Barry. And it was published in 1976. So it was published just after he died. And was given away to anybody that coughed up, I think, £25 for the Alexander Memorial Tournament, which was held in Teesside. It was almost a complete failure. The grandmasters invited were either far too strong for the English players, or conversely far too old to put in grandmasterly performances. Alexander himself, had he played when he was at the height of his form, probably about 1950 or something, would have done okay in the tournament, as did Tony Miles and Ray Keane. They did okay, but it wasn't anything great. Alexander was never a professional player. He was an amateur. He was a school teacher. He worked for John Lewis's. He was a code breaker. He was a code breaker? Da, da, da. Did you see this when it came out? If you didn't, why didn't you? It is the story of code breaking in deepest Buckinghamshire. It is indeed the story of Alan Turing, here played by Benedict Cumberbatch. Basically, it is about the little group that they formed to break the codes and encrypt the German messages and ultimately, and they were successful, bring down the Luftwaffe. And here we have the star, Benedict Cumberbatch. I'll just read it. During the darkest days of World War II, the British government enlisted the help of mathematician Alan Turing to crack the enigma, the unbreakable German encryption device. Turing and his team, of whom Alexander, which is why I'm reading this now, was one, his team of code breakers must unlock the Enigma code before their operation is infiltrated and their lives are lost. It is intense and thrilling, it says. Well, it was a good film, and I've watched it several times, and there it is. If you see it around in an old video shop or somewhere, get it. Chess is mentioned for about 3 seconds in the film, and they get it wrong. They say that Alexander was twice British champion, which he was, but the film is set during the Second World War. And during that time, he'd only won it once at Brighton in 1938. He also won it in 1956 in Blackpool, and they got it off Wikipedia, but they didn't check to see that that hadn't happened yet. They were more far-seeing than they knew. The next book I want to show you is by the aforesaid C.H.O.D. Alexander. There it is. This is the first of a number of stabs that were made in writing this little book. It's nothing fantastic. It's published by Pitman, same people that did the shorthand, and it does contain a number of insights and photographs, some of which are rather splendid. Here's one. Do you know who that is? It's Alekhine. It looks like he signed it. Alekhine spelt his name in a number of different ways in his life. And there he is, spelling it with an E on the end. And he's also dated it 1936. So perhaps that was when he was He came to England for Nottingham 1936. Let's see if there's any more pictures. I think I know. Here's Reshevsky looking suitably dumbstruck. There he is. Reshevsky played in England a fair bit, actually. He was always popping across. Very strong American grandmaster. Number 2 player for some years, just behind Bobby Fish. Sallow floor. Extremely strong Russian. I'm hesitating because he travelled around a bit in Europe. And here's somebody I've mentioned several times before, and I'm glad I have. Sir George Thomas. There he is. English international master. Always kindly thought of. A big gun. Very theatrical. Emmanuel Lasker. Pince-nez on nose, beard on chin, and finger on the word, I've little doubt. Dr. Lasker won the championship at the age of 25 from Steinitz. No one won so many lost games as Lasker. In other words, he could turn around a difficult, sometimes impossible, seemingly impossible position. The book contains everything from how the pieces move right up to reasonably advanced concepts and strong recommendations for openings. And considering it's quite a small book, Games and Recreations series, I rather like it. There it is. Now, what's this? I'll tell you what it is. It's exactly the same book. But no, I haven't taken leave of my senses, or if I have, this is not to be held against me. This is an updated version. And there is one of the reasons a new player coming through. We both know him as Tigran Petrosian. Sadly, died many years ago now, but the fact is, this is a much more up-to-date edition of Alexander's book. This is the 5th edition, published in 1968. It's quite a nice little book. There's a picture, very good one, actually, it's a bit washed out. Do you know who that is? It is Dr. Jonathan Penrose, still alive, Britain's senior grandmaster. A very private man. I would describe him as not just retired, but retiring. And here's Boris Spassky, who's also still alive, prior to becoming world champion. The book was published in 1968. He hadn't become world champion, but he was heir apparent. And one more picture, smiling internally, but for the benefit of the cameras also, Mikhail Tal, the Latvian. That was of some interest. What's this? Oh my goodness, it's exactly the same book all over again. This is the 3rd edition, which I have. It also contained, this was £3, just shows you what inflation has done to us. And this is by CHOD Alexander CMG CBE. And it's a Pitman published in 1974, no doubt in an effort to take advantage of the Fisher-Spassky boom. And do you know what? It hasn't got any photographs in it at all. The most expensively produced of the 3 editions. They couldn't even be bothered to put any photos in it. I think that's a bit mean, don't you? I think they should have done. It's in descriptive notation, nothing against that. And it deals with various aspects of the game, fairly commonplace, but it's okay. And coming from Alexander, who had a fine eye, both strategically and tactically, there he's talking about the Rui Lopez. And here, a position from the 2 knights' defense. And he talks about various aspects of teams and things that he enjoyed. And now a change of pace. We're going to talk about Smarties. Now, Smarties, as you know, are nothing to do with chess. Smarties and some Smarties. I'm having you on. This is covering for a book. The cover was in a terrible state. It's an old library book. I rather like these old ones. I used to work in a charity shop, and therefore I got first dibs on the books. And obviously, if any chess books came in, they rushed them over to me. This is published by Bell, who did a lot of good for chess. They merged in the end, Bell and Hyman, in the 70s, I think. But they did publish a lot of chess books. And this is called British Chess Masters, Past and Present, by Fred Reinfeldt. And it was published in London in 1947. And he deals with 52 not exclusively English. He ventures across to deal with some Commonwealth players as well, such as the habit at the time, such as Purdy, Janowski, who studied in England in the early 1950s, but was Canadian. Fyodor Menshik was born in Moscow, but died in England. And the very last game in the book is what interests us today. And that is a game by Hugh Alexander. Alexander beat Botvinnik, who was heir apparent. He was to become world champion on the death of Alekhine. He was to win the tournament that was convened because Alekhine had died as world champion. And Hugh beat him in the radio match of 1946. It was a winnower, and Botvinnik played as early as move 9, but prematurely having exchanged pawns, Queen A5. And believe you me, at the end, Reinfeldt says a game destined for immortality. Tony Miles beat Karpov, what didn't he, when he was world champion in 1980? Blackburn beat Lasker twice when Lasker was world champion. And there's something else to put a feather in our national cap in the days when you could become a patriot without becoming a racist. No, I don't think you can. Now here's a book, one of the last that he wrote, A Book of Chess by C.H.O.D. Alexander. Hugh again. This book was published by, I think, Hutchinson. Let's have a look. I think it was Hutchinson. Yes, Hutchinson of London. And it relies not entirely on illustration. Alexander wrote a book of chess, which is this. He also wrote a book of about the Fischer-Spassky match, which I've got, but I won't be showing you that today. Here's Bobby and Boris shaking hands, looking away, looking at the board, doing anything other than looking at the audience, I suppose. The book also contains some excavations going on. Look at that. Archaeology in the raw. And some chess pieces. In these little tin wags, I've shown various chess pieces. Some of them quite ornate. Well, these came straight out the ground. Here's a woodcut. I don't like woodcuts. I used to have several books just containing them. Anyway, there's a woodcut of one of the strongest players of all time, Wilhelm Steinitz. Apparently his family was called Wolf. So there we are. Here's Botvinnik again, playing Arnold Denker. Poor old Denker won the US Championships just after the war, and as a result of this got put on top board, but he couldn't really handle. He was punching above his weight, and he had to play Botvinnik. My God, he knew all about it. There's a little amusing article about chess. And here's a photograph of La Bourdonnais, I think, and Staunton. Saint-Amand, not La Bourdonnais, and Staunton. So this was England versus France. There. Presumably that's a contemporary. I was going to say painting. It may have been line drawing. I'd have to check on that. Here is chess, as rendered by Marcel Duchamp, I think. He also shows activity and movement very well. That picture may be a bit blurry for you, but nevertheless, Duchamp became, as he got older, increasingly interested in chess, mostly friendly games. And he went to New York. But in his time, he did play games against Alekhine, and he also played, looking at Alexander talks about Go here. There we go. So he makes comparisons. He was rather good at that for somebody who was knee-deep in chess on so many levels. He maintained a certain freshness, which was possibly born of the fact that he knew about the world away from King 4. Here we are. Look. The Oriental version. I suppose that's shogi, is it? Tirades of letters saying it's not shogi, it's not shogi. I think it is. I think it's shogi. There's an interview with Bent Larsen here, quite detailed. There's Larsen, who bounced back remarkably well, losing 6-0 to Fischer. This is a coffee table book. In its time, it would only been about £3 or £4. Now it would be a lot more. And the last book I'm going to show you, by Hugh Alexander, is another bell. This may ring a bell. This book was brought out to conclude the trilogy of books by Alekhine. Alekhine died before he could write about his the finishing phase of his career, and Alexander was brought in. There's a track record of how Alekhine got on. Alexander was brought in to compile the manuscript and annotate the games. I didn't think this is a very good book, but I've spoken to a number of strong players who tell me it is a good book. It's just me. It's just my lack of judgment, and I can quite believe it. So here's Alexander playing in the between the wars. Here's him playing Keres in 1942. And Elescasus in 1939. Alekhine, I meant to say, I didn't mean Alexander. Solo Floor, once again, I mentioned him and I showed you the photograph of him in the book. So this was the best games. There's 42 games in fairly careful annotations, nothing too heavy. And this is a bell. That has been Chess Comedy Books 14. Games of CHOD Alexander. I've been James Pratt, and you haven't.